All right, we're recording. And let me share the screen for W3 with y'all. Okay. So we were up here on cascading style sheets. Does everyone remember where we were last? Yep. All right. So there's going to be a little bit of repetition because they repeat things just to kind of remind people. So the next section for today, we're going to go from links down to iframes. I'm not going to worry too much about JavaScripts with you guys because unless you really decide you want to work on JavaScripts, that's not going to be part of the first 3 weeks because JavaScripting is its own beast in and of itself. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other stuff, but mostly we'll just go down from links to iframes, and then we'll go through some of these other sections where it says forms and whatnot. In fact, let me make sure so I don't tell you through. Okay, so we're just going to go through iframes for this week, and then next week we'll hit some of the other stuff. I might do a little bit of overlap on this one since the other class you can't do. Yeah, JavaScripting is a lot of fun if you know how to JavaScript and you want to throw JavaScript into your stuff. I think Gwen's probably going to be a bit ahead on some things, and some of you who have done HTML, if you want to play, go right ahead. gotta love Zoom and its many updates. It's like, let's update. Yep, sounds like Zoom. Okay, so links are where we are right after CSS, and we talked a little bit about this where they talked about the href, which is your HTML link syntax. Here's how you do that, and again, your beginning and end brackets, which looks like this here. Personally, JavaScript can be fun, but it can also be incredibly painful if you're looking for problems when you're fixing someone else's thing. Okay, so there's also things that you can do with link colors. And here is, as you can see, you can do what the link looks like when it is just there. What's it look like when it's so HTML, they've got it set to green. Okay, that's what it looks like when it's there. What does it look like after you click on it? Okay, we're going to make it pink. Hover, red. Active, yellow. So if you click on it, you saw how it changed to yellow. So that all of those change states you can put in there as well. It can be really nice to do that. And again, this is where we really like those cascading style sheets, the external ones, because you can make a, sorry, I've been up since 5 a.m. You can make a theme that has all of these colors in it that goes throughout your entire website. So you have all those different states, all those different leak states, and if you really want to be extra, you can change them for every page. But honestly, from a design aspect, you don't want to throw that many changes at a user because then they're like, oh, what happened? And for most of the classes that I was taught, the average user spends less than, they used to say less than 30 seconds. Honestly, it's less than 10 seconds when they see that initial website. So if they feel like, this website is not functional, you really don't have a whole lot of time to grab their attention and tell them, okay, this is actually a functional, good website that we can use. Okay. HTML links. Create a bookmark. So this is creating a bookmark that allows you to jump to another section within that, like when they have those giant documents and things like that. That's where you have that pound sign, C4, C10, jump to chapter 4, drops you down there. And then you can do that. It's right here. And just so you know, that is similar to what it looks like when you're in a Word document table as well. I'm not altogether sure. If you're there and you can go pick it up, I don't think there's a problem with you picking it up versus having it mailed out. So if you can go pick it up, I would go get it because you would get it faster. So yeah, in my opinion, I would go get it. It's the same stuff. I would just say pay for it and go pick it up. Okay, so then we have our jump to chapter 10 here, going back to there. No, I think that it was kind of how the bookstore and CEC Council put that together. Yeah, so I don't think it matters whether you ship it or pick it up. You get the same thing. Personally, if you were that close, I would go get it because then you don't have to worry about someone losing it in the mail. And that's just what I would do. All right, so
sorry.
question?
Is there a way I can pick it up for other people too? Because if that's the case, I'll just go down there and grab it all at once. We just meet like a coffee shop. I'll just dig them out.
I don't know. I would call the bookstore and ask them. There's nothing wrong with asking them.
All right.
We might be able to, the ones that haven't shipped, you might be able to fix that. That could possibly be.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Huh? No, kitty. You are rude when you come up. Psst, psst, psst. Come on, don't make me use the canned air on you. Okay, so HTML images. So remember my comment about using alt tags. So don't forget that you have to think about accessibility. So here we have several different examples, and I'll just click here to show you these. It's all pretty much the same thing. Here's your image, here's your alt text, here's your width and your height. Do you guys remember this from when we went through it the other day, I'm assuming? Oh, and there are also, so your width and your height, let me see. There is also a way on some of these to do percentages as well. So you can do set size, but you can also do, kitty, I said no. You can do percentages as well. Okay. Image maps. So this is a map, or is an image map with clickable areas. So those fun things where you guys had the click and drag, the hardware stuff, there we're using image maps for those.
Those never happen. We don't speak of that witchcraft.
The witchcraft which didn't work. Yeah. That's because image maps are actually quite difficult. So this is actually what it looks like behind the scenes. So as you can see, you kind of guess as to where you want people to hit, and it works sometimes, and it works not so well other times. So just be aware, this is what it looks like. In fact, I kind of want to, I wish I could go back and open those, probably could. I wonder if I could actually see the code or if it would bar me from that, because sometimes when you open remember us opening the developer tools, sometimes when you open those, you get this little thing on there that hides everything and it won't show you. Okay, background images. So this is where you take a paragraph style, so that's with that P style, and then they use an actual image. You see that right there? This one's a terrible example, but they actually use an image for the background. A lot of places have kind of gone away from using that. You saw a lot of like 90s, early 2000 places doing that, but it usually caused some issues with load time. So a lot of places don't, and they go towards colors more than anything else now. Yeah, MySpace. Yes. And then you have people that were really jerks and they had like little video things all over the place and bling, 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 all that stuff. Yeah, that
Sorry, Nick. MySpace was this pre-Facebook social media site that you wouldn't know anything about because you're a child.
Yes, exactly. MySpace seemed really cool at the time, and then it was it was terrible for those of us who then had to fix. Here's some more examples. Here's a repeating one. And here, as you can see, are all sorts of fun ones that they have done. And I say fun being sarcastic here. All right, then there is now the we should all expect to be very funny, yes. HTML picture element allows you to display different pictures for different devices or screens. Now, I will tell you to be aware that every web page is viewed differently for different screen site types. We're not going to go too much into that for this class, but something that I had to be aware of, and anyone who's a web developer, and probably Gwen with your boot camp, you probably had to do this. There are tools and developer tools out there that will give you an option where you click. In fact, I think there's some really good Chrome extensions. I know there was one for Firefox at one point in time that you would just tell it, I want mobile and I want this size, or I want, and it would show you what it would look like on that device. And when I was doing mobile develop, that was a very nice option, because looking at something on an iPhone or an iPad or a tablet or Android or whatever, they even had like all sorts of different things you could do it on, is significantly different than it does on the other things. And you know how they have the collapsing. When you look at a website, you'll have the desktop and then they'll have the mobile version. Well, they also have, there's different design elements for that too. And we're not going to go into a huge amount of that since we're just doing basic HTML.
I still remember when smartphones first came out and you would try and load into like websites and stuff, and the
and they'd be
website
little
would just go
tiny to be like
insane.
zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your eyeballs. Although I did hear the funniest story. It was actually from Will Wheaton talking to his wife. His wife was reading a regular book, and she just started cackling. And he said, "Well, what's the problem?" She said, "I know that I've been reading on my tablet too much, because I just tried to use the pinch to zoom option on a paper book." And I'm like, yeah, I can see myself doing that. And that absolutely sounds like something that I would do. Okay, so here are our picture elements. And here you see picture, and it's done just like when you see the heading and things like that. Here's your source, your min width, and let me go show you exactly what this looks like. Okay, so the nice thing about this one is it gives you a lot more options. So you have your minimum width, and then you have, this is the minimum width that you can use this source image for. Now, when you hit this minimum width, this is what you use this one for. And then here is this one, and this is what you do with the auto width. I mean, it's why using the picture width is a little bit more, there's a lot more you have to do for it, but it gives you a lot more options for screen sizes and things like that to play with. Okay. So, all right, that's far, we're through the images, the basics for images before we'll go down to favicon. Is there any questions on that? Nope. Okay, so favicon We should all be familiar with this, but a lot of people are surprisingly unfamiliar with how to create one. So a fave icon image, see that little green W? That is the little tiny thing you see displayed up on your website. So when you do that, and you add a link element with your index, there's whenever you create a large web page, usually your very first page is your index.html. And that is your very first page that you go to. And on your index, ow, cat, that was my arm you stuck your claw in. In that page, you have your page title, and then you see this right here, points to your save icon. And you just save there. In order to make them, there's all sorts of little, oh, for crying out loud.
All right, everybody, class is canceled.
No, I have I updated my antivirus because I used to use one that wasn't quite as hard, and I went back to Bitdefender because it really is better, but I forgot that sometimes it doesn't like some of these things. But anyway, when you use these, there are all sorts of, you want to name it faveicon.ico, and it's just this little tiny, it's usually like a PNG file that you save, and I can't remember if it's 45 by 45 or 90 by 90, so it's really small, which is why so many places have really bold like letters, or they try at first when they tried to make them super complicated, and then when you shrink them down they look like crap. So it's really better to make bold colors, one color, not a whole lot of like minuscule details when you're doing things like that. All right, page titles. Let's see. Now we're going down. I just wanted to make sure we're in here. All right, so this is that thing on the top that we talked about. You name it, and remember, it's going to be up on that. See where it says HTML page title? That's where the title is going to show up. So remember that, and remember you only have a certain amount of space before it does text and then ... So most people aren't going to hover over it to see what the rest of it says, unless you're on some sort of an academic paper site where they actually want to read the entire thing. Yeah, this is totally not a scam website.com. Yeah, so make it something short and to the point, as that's my advice. So try to distill the concept of your page down to 2 or 3 words. Yeah, I know that figures, doesn't it? And most universities are terrible, and school districts are terrible about that. When I originally was the content designer who was going out and fixing and recreating the website, everything that I did had to be run through a school board. I don't know if any of you have had to deal with a school board, but usually, my dad's in the background laughing because he used to work for the school district. Usually they're made of people who are older, who don't know anything about technology, and who are very stuck on their ideas. They don't want to change once they think they come up with a cute word pun or something like that. So it's very difficult, and it's kind of like dealing with a board of directors or any sort of other governing body. You have to physically show them why. So if you're doing any sort of web design and you want to get your point across, the only way I have ever found to get my point across is to physically show them www.iamthebestpersoninthewholewide world, look at me.com does not fit on here, and it doesn't look good. Also, people can come up with some really terrible abbreviations. Case in point, I used to work for the ISU Registration and Records Department. And one of the projects that I was on was I had to go back and look at really old transcripts, and we had to look at the abbreviations that they used for some of the classes. And some of the classes that you thought that they thought a long time ago, they didn't think about them when they made the abbreviations. They were just like, whatever, we'll abbreviate by the first couple letters of this class and just go for it. Well, that's great, unless your class is math analytics. And you can see where I'm going when you use the first four letters of analytics. It does not come out well on a transcript whatsoever. Think about that too when you're doing things like that. Okay, tables. And on your final project, you will need to do a table. Tables really aren't that hard. You just have to know the pieces of the table. So this is a super simple example of an alternating color table. Let me show you here. It looks weird, but all of this right here, all of that, you just have to know what they stand for. And when I was originally taught, I did not know what these meant. Table row, table header. And this one, oh shoot, well, this TD. This is your, I'm sure someone knows, data. Yeah, thank you. It's your data within your cell. I knew the D stood for something, but for some reason my head blanked on it. So it's made to be super simple, but people make them a lot more difficult than it has to be. So your table, like everything else, you should have your table tag. And this is one of those ones that is actually really super easy to mess up on, because there's been a lot of times when I've done tables for other people, when I've done proofreading, that I'm like, well, that's great, but you forgot the /tr online, blah, blah, blah. So remember, beginning table, end table. This is your first row here. You see how it goes over to company, contact, that's everything across that row. And then they say TH because they're the headers. And you'll notice that changes the type here. Well, one thing that also does when you're doing tables, tables are read differently. Well, it's in there a couple. There are parameters that you can change for the rows and what rows are set to what as well too. And I'll show you that too. But also remember, when you're doing the TR, TH, TD, you remember me talking about the screen readers? They read tables the same way. And if you don't put things in order on your table with that TH, they won't know that's a heading when it's read to them. So be aware that needs to be in there as well. So, okay, you can see that's your heading. This is your next one down. And then your next one, and so forth. Now we'll go over here. They talk about defining your tables, which are cells inside of rows and columns. So each cell, as you said, data, thank you for that. Each cell is the TD, table data. Duh. Can't believe I didn't get that. So TD is table data, TR row, TH header. So here is your super basic without the TH, okay, which is table header. No, if you do TD, it will not bold. If you do TH, it will see it as a header and it will change it. So TD doesn't, TH, yeah, TH will. TH will change it, yeah. So you were asking about borders and things. So here's how you do these. These are basically when you look at you know how you do the super simple tables when you're doing Word and stuff like this? Those were actually built out of this concept. This is how you do the borders and things like that. So table THTD, and you can see here that's saying, hey, I want a 1 pixel solid blacks. So here is what this looks like. We want a table style. We want it to be 100%. That means it goes all the way across the page. Up here, what do we want? We want the table, THN, we want the border, 1 pixel solid black. So that's part of your style. That'll be if you're using an external cascading style sheet, you'll have a table section that you do that in. No, you never use 100%. Steve is correct. I think they're just using this as an example, but normally I do not like to use 100% because A, it doesn't show across the page well, and B, I don't even use 99. I usually use something like 85, or because most people, it crams it way out to the edges and it's just a mess. So yeah, that is a great point. 53.2. Yeah, you get a personal field. You can do collapsed table borders. So if you don't want double borders, you can do in CSS border collapse, and then it looks like this. See this right here? And that's what it looks like. And in fact, I'm probably going to go out and look for a CSS cheat sheet, but CSS, there are tons of cheat sheets on for these. Yeah, I usually use 75 to 80 something, if I remember, is what I used to do. So those are borders. Table sizes. You can do table, and I always did the columns at different sizes because usually different pieces of data require different things. I still think it's crazy I think they're just doing table width at 100% just to make it easy for you guys to see. So this one is just 100%. Oh, you got it? Thank you. That sounds like success on the door. Okay, so this is what 100% looks like with your 1 pixel black collapsed. Yeah, border collapse, there is, I didn't think about that, but there is probably a really bad political joke in there. Now there's column width. So you can set your table style, and then remember how we talked about TRTH? Well, inside that TH, you can set the style. Okay, let's say we want to say this is this. And then it looks like, you can see, let me minimize that so I can see that. You can see that is a really bad idea because the first name is never going to take up that. I won't say never. I was in registration office. We had some really long names. So most of the time you don't see it take up that much space, but you usually don't see that much space that's needed to be used. So usually you'll do the table width, and then you'll set the columns within that table to different widths. This is just a very extreme example showing you how to do that. So this is within the table header on that particular table header section. Okay. So does that make sense on that one right there with the table header? Yes, yes. Okay. All right. Let's scroll down. HTML row height. So this is the same thing, just in height as you would do with width. Thank you. Give me just 1 second. I need to put my screwdriver back in my tool case. There we go. So you can do, again, you got your style. Let me show you here. And I think, like I said, they're just doing extreme ones to show you what it looks like. So you have your table width, and then you have this particular row. We need an extremely big size. We don't on this, but sometimes you'll run into chunks of data where you have like a a huge amount of text or something that you want it to be set to. Now, they do also have ones where they just let it run in auto, which a lot of places do, but if you want a consistent look for your table, a lot of the times the column size is at least changed to a consistent look, because there's nothing that looks more unprofessional than having little chunks and pieces all over for a table. At least that's what it always looks like to me.
This setting up of the tables is just giving me panicky flashbacks to Microsoft Excel.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a bit of that too. All right, table headers. We had some questions about table headers. Let's see here. We have the TH element. Now that's the header cell, as we talked about here. And you can do, on the top, you'll see the TH table, TD. And then you just have your section there that shows that as well. And then they have vertical table headers, which means they come down that left-hand column. And that is, let's see how they did that. Okay, so instead of having, can you see where it says T, anywhere you have TH, it will assume that that is your table header. So instead of having all of them in that first row, you can see they're the first one in each of those columns. And you ask the question about, does it change that to a different font or a different size? There, right there, you can see it changes the attributes on that as well. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, that's because they have some tables you do this way, some tables you do vertical, horizontal. It just, yep, 22, exactly. Yes. Just like 1 + 0 = 1 0, just depending on where you're going. Aligning table headers. By default, they're bold and centered, but you can align them left. You just do that text align left for your table header. Yep, 282. Yes. Like I said, in programming and things like this, there are lots of ways to get to the same thing. So if you get, as long as you get the end result, I'm not going to punish you. And then you have ones where you can do the merge and or call span is what they're called. And let me show you what that one looks like. You can see call span 2, and that means that you have two columns. It's the span of 2 columns for the rest of them, and that one is your table header. Does that make sense? So I know a lot of these are like drinking from the fire hose, but the nice thing is everything is laid out and set here. And a lot of these are done in, yes, Kitty, I like you. Please stop smacking me. A lot of these are laid out so that you can try them over and over again. Now there's also the caption tag. The caption tag is, I personally think if you're going to use a table, you need to have a caption on it, because when you're doing screen readers, now there are, I believe there's alts you can do to caption tags as well, but you need something that says what that table is actually for, because it's going to read it out like that too. So personally, I think having a table caption is a nice addition. So see that it's super easy. Just caption. There you go. And you can even, I believe you can even set it in different spots on here as well. And there is a good note right there. Make sure you put it immediately after your table tag. So a lot of these, it's just like when you put things within the body tag, you have to have the table tag, and then you have those on there as well. Okay, padding and spacing, and this is really one of the best places that you're going to be using padding and spacing. They call it cell padding. And as you can see, Here's one with padding. Here's one with spacing. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Let me, I thought I just was used to it, but yeah, I can always turn that off. I have ad blocker. Let me reload that. All right. I don't know if that's much better, but hopefully. Okay. Padding and spacing. I had to turn it off when I was working with something else because it had an absolute fit. Okay. So here's your example on here. This is, you'll see that this uses 15 and it does by pixel. This one's using padding, 15 pixels. And you can see there, it's got your padding. And then you have, personally, I prefer to do this because then you can change your pixel amounts around, like you have your top, bottom, left, right, padding. I like to do this because sometimes you like to have a little bit more in different areas. So this is just showing you what it looks like when you have the different, there's 10, 20, 30, 40. On this one, it just shows you how it looks on there. A lot of times this is very handy because, like I said, white space is just as important as adding text and other things. Sometimes you have to draw the person's eye in, and sometimes you have to give them enough space in order to read things. Because if you cram a whole lot of text in there, I don't know about you, but if I have a lot of text in there, it makes my eyes feel like they're going to bleed. So you don't want to make people hate your website or your tables or things like that. It really means that they're not going to use your website. Okay, and then there's also border spacing here. So that just means that whole thing around the outside. And I will say, I don't see that used as much in tables as I do padding. Okay. All right. And you don't have to do these except if you want to, these little test yourself exercises. Those are just for fun. All right. Now, are there any questions before I go on past that? We good? We good? All right. Call span and row span. So that's column and row. So to make a cell span over multiple columns, you can use call span, which they used. You saw them use that in the other one. So this one goes over 2 columns, or, you know, if you have, say, a lot of times you'll see one that goes all the way across all top of them. You can do, it goes across the top. So that's call span. Row span is just the row version of that. So as you can see, this one, hey, we're just talking about phone numbers for this person. Table styling. Okay. This is where you get to make the nifty colors and the lines and all this stuff in here. So, and as you can see, remember me talking about the hash codes? That's where they talk about that. So we have our border collapse, we have our line, our padding, and this one, they're talking about every other, here we go, they talk about to style every other table row, use that nth child even, and that goes each one, every other one. That makes sense? Right. And I don't expect you to remember the nth child. This is why and CSS has so many options that when I use CSS, I just had all sorts of sheets and sheet guides bookmarked because there are so many, so many. These are vertical zebra stripes going that way. If you really want to be extra, you can do something like this. I don't suggest it. You have to remember, I just realized whose names they were using. That's what the Family Guy comment was about. And then you can also do border bottom, which is just the bottom one.
They combine the vertical and horizontal because it's a table and they're having picnic.
That's kind of what it looks like, doesn't it? But it's more difficult to read, in my opinion. In my opinion, on tables, less is more. The more white space, you don't need a huge ton of it, but you need to have at least some so that you space things out enough for people to read. All right.
So at the service desk, as some of you might know, I'm a technical writer, and I actually do have to sometimes create tables inside our documents. And for the most part, the program we use is kind of like Word, but every so often I will actually have to go into these little codes here and actually change it. That's kind of how they have a really basic, they don't have any kind of flashy colors. It's just a simple table, because if not, they just get distracted really easy.
Yeah, it is super easy to have that happen, especially if you're working with a big table. Whenever I did tons and tons of SQL and things like that, it was super easy to have that happen. Okay, so this one is talking about coal group, and this is basically just creating your grouping and using that there as well. And I don't expect you guys to have to use this in what we did before. This one's coal span, and this is like when you're blocking stuff out for schedules. These are blanks and these are colored. And these, they just collapsed certain columns so they wouldn't see them there, which is altogether possible. Okay. I don't know about you guys, but I need a break for a second. So I need to go grab something to drink. So I'm going to pause recording, and we don't have much left. Well, let me see how much we have left. I might be wrong, but we have a little bit left, but we're going down to iframes, which shouldn't be too much. So give me just about 5 minutes and I will be right back with you. So let me pause the recording. All right, recording resumed. And we are going to talk about lists, which are different than tables. There are ordered and unordered lists. As you can see, unordered is over there on the left, ordered on the right. So basically, numbers are ordered lists. So here's what they look like. UL, unordered list. OL, ordered list. And LI just means list item. And again, this is one of those things that I was just told, that's what it is. I wasn't told what it actually meant when I first learned. So here's what they mean. Unordered list, list item. And there's your example. And I'm going to kind of cruise through some of these because I think most of you are just dying in the background there. Ordered list, list items. I cannot tell you how important it is for beginning and end tags on lists. That is where I find the most mistakes. There are also description lists, which is a list of terms with a description of each term. I actually don't see this very often, but here is what those look like. So you have the DL tag, which is your description list, the DT tag, which is your term, which I think is like data tag, and then DD tag, which describes everything in there. So there's your list, the whole thing there, term, and then what that term actually is. All right. And here's a nice little cheat sheet right here. If you want to steal that, you're welcome to. So we just went through All of these. There's no reason for us to go through them again. Okay. Block and inline elements. We went through this a little bit. Block level elements. These are, they start on a new line and they automatically add space or margin. So do you remember we talking about block quotes? This is where block quotes come from. Commonly, you'll see div or p. Most often, p is considered an older one and div is newer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gwen, when you did boot camp, did they prefer div or p now? That's what I thought. Okay. So P is an older one that came out first, and div is what you'll see more often.
P jokes.
So many jokes, I know. So this is, they look basically the same. But div allows you, there's a little bit more, there's more things that you can do with the div tag, if I remember correctly. And then there are some block level elements that you can use in there. And then we have inline. These are elements that don't start on a new line, and they only take up as much width as you need to. The span tag is an example. And those, you'll see they have everything on that one is usually in there and in there. Yes, just remember beginning and end tags. That's the thing I cannot stress enough. Remember your beginning and remember your end tags, and remember they are in the correct section. All right, div. It's usually a container element. It doesn't require any of the style, class, or ID. But you usually use those with it. But a lot of times, because you don't have to have those, they use the CSS, and that's where everything goes to. So you can do the inline version of the div style, blah, 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 which is what that looks like right there. Or they will throw the div in there, and then all the style stuff is in that external CSS. The span element, that's your inline container used to mark up just one particular part of the text or document. It has no required attributes, but again, style, class, and ID are often, and it's often used with CSS. And here's just another example of that. And okay. Div, again, it's a default block element. It takes all available width, breaks before, comes with line breaks before and after, which is why they use the div tag now, if I remember correctly, because the paragraph tag doesn't always work with every single browser that's ever done, but the div tag does. So there we go. As an example of div. And then we have div as a container. And as you can see, that looks significantly different. I personally like the div tag just because I think it spaces things out a lot easier. You can do a center line div tag right here. You can do multiple div elements, which is very nice. You can align them side by side. You can do a float, which allows them to just sit next to each other side by side. And that's your section there for it. There's an inline block. And as you can see, it has a nice little padding here for each block, and they have it changed. Flex. This is a CSS flex box. outline layout, can tell it's getting hard for me. Layout module was introduced to make it easier to design flexible, responsive layout structure without using float positioning. Float positioning can get painful because you have to do a lot more. Each and every single one has to be calculated. That's not what you do with flex. To make that work, surround the div container with another div and give that the status as a flex container. And this is what they look like. So div class, my container, and usually you'll see they have div classes, and then that and all of that style stuff is out in your CSS sheet. And it's just all of the style related to this references back to that name. And as you can see, this is where I said you got to make sure you have your beginning and end tags. There's beginning, there's the end. And then this one begins here and ends here, begins here, ends here, begins here, ends here. So that's the one thing that can get difficult with div tags is you have div within div. So make sure that you actually have all of them correct. But I can tell you one thing, if you're missing one, it won't run correctly. So that will be pretty apparent right away. Then there's the grid layout. I'm going to kind of just run through some of these very quickly. And you can see here, display grid template, and you can see it's set each one of these because it's a third each, so 33%. And then it says, okay, here's your attributes then. Well, you're going to come here. My grumpy torty. Oh, and then she just goes right up and over. No, you're not good enough for me. Okay. Classes. Class attribute is often used to point a name to a class name in a style sheet. It can also be used by JavaScript to access multiple elements in specific class names. So in the next one, we have 3 div elements with a class attribute with the value of city. And all 3 div elements will be styled equally according to the .city style definition in the header section. So anywhere you see that when you go look at the cascading style sheet, that's this, all of that applies to the .city. Yeah, like Gwen said, if you mess up one of those divs, and that usually was where I got hit with my beginning and end tags, was when I had multi-level divs. That's usually where it was. Every once in a while, I would have to have someone else read it for me because I would just be like, I'm missing something. And that is the nice thing about, I think Visual Studio will tell you when you're missing a tag. It's been a while since I've used it though. So here's an example of what this looks like. So each of these div classes says, okay, it needs to go use city. And so each of these chunks is formatted the same way. And this one, it's using note, and it's using note. In order to, the syntax for class, for doing a class, you have to put a period, character followed by the class name. That's how you start that. And then everything between those curly brackets is, or braces, sorry, is the properties. Yeah, I remember when Dreamweaver was cool. Me too. Yeah, it's sad, but yeah, it started out not too bad, and then it just went. So, and this is, as you can see, there are 2 different ones. There's a city and there's a main. Okay, so this one, city main, city. So you can see that there. We're not going to do JavaScript. HTML ID. So the ID attribute specifies a unique ID for an HTML and the element. The value of the ID attribute must be unique, and remember that it has to be unique within the HTML document. Also, when you're doing cascading style sheets, those city, .main that they're using, those have to be unique as well. The ID attribute is used to point to a specific style declaration in a style sheet. It's also used by JavaScript to access and manipulate the element within specific ID. The syntax for ID is write a hash character followed by the ID name, then define the CSS properties within your curly braces. So my header, curly braces. There we go. Da, da, da. There's your blue. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Difference between a class and ID. Class name can be used by multiple HTML elements, while an ID name can only be used by one HTML element within the page. So you have my header that can only be used once, whereas city can be used multiple times. So as you see here, my cities once, and then, or was it my header? Sorry, my header, the name, my cities, super helpful because if you've got city over here, somebody needs to be smacked. And then you have cities, and they're all multiple there. Does that make sense? I know all of us are ready to go cry in our corner, but does that make sense with it? Did I lose you? We're all crying. It's beer 30. I understand. HTML bookmarks with IDs and links. So we talked about those jumping to chapter. So this is, you can do the IDC4, then add ahref like we did before. And then you can use, we're not going to do that. Okay, iframes. We're going to do a short one on iframes because iframes are used constantly. They are annoying. Not those type of frames. My dad, ever the smart Alex over there pointing to his glasses like, these, no. So frame is a tag that specifies an inline frame and is used to embed another document within your HTML document. So iframe source equals URL in this case, and then the title is this. So you'll see here, iframe, demo frame, HTML, and then you have your height and width, and then title. I suggest, even if you're not going to use, don't think you're going to use that. Remember me talking about screen readers? That's another accessibility issue. That's something you need to use. Or iframe example, I think that's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. So just remember, it's a good idea to put a title in there. You can do, let's see, this one removes the border. You can change the size of the border. You can change the color. You can do an iframe target for a link. And then you can make the whole thing a link if you want to. So yeah, that is the end of it. A lot of times what is actually used for iframes now is actually like a YouTube video. Sometimes they're like mini pictures, but a lot of times it's an inline for a YouTube video. No comment. Okay, so that is it for the lecture portion. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.